10:50 local time. In the northern Arabian Sea, a single missile left a mobile launcher on the Iranian coast. USS Stockdale, the forward destroyer of the Lincoln Strike Group, had the contact on SPY's 6-4 seconds after launch. One track, one trajectory, sea skimming approach, 30 meters above the water, inbound bearing 347. The track data reached USS Abraham Lincoln's Combat Information Center in under 2 seconds. The tactical action officer, Lieutenant Commander James Reyes, had the engagement sequence initiated in under 12 seconds. 2 SM-6 interceptors, assigned from the strike group's forward escorts. Fire control solution building, standard sequence. The kind of engagement the ship's Combat Information Center had run hundreds of times in simulation. In the Lincoln's electronic warfare suite, Lieutenant Commander Dana Kowalski was looking at something that was not in any simulation she had ever run. Not the guidance frequency, not the radar seeker. A secondary processing emission, a faint but specific electromagnetic signature generated by the missile's onboard computing architecture as it ran. A signature she had seen exactly once before, in a classified intelligence briefing 2 years earlier about an Iranian AI-guided anti-ship missile program assessed as still in early development. A program that the analysts had placed at least 3 years from operational readiness. She looked at the passive sensor display for 3 seconds. The Khalij-5 was operational, and it was 9 minutes and 14 seconds from the Lincoln's flight deck. To understand why Kowalski stopped moving when she saw that signature, you have to understand what makes the Khalij-5 different from every other anti-ship missile Iran has ever fired. It does not fly faster than other missiles, it does not carry a larger warhead, it does not maneuver more aggressively in terminal phase. Those parameters are what missile defense systems are designed to counter. What the Khalij-5 does is think. Its onboard AI processing system monitors every defensive action the formation takes throughout its entire flight. Every radar emission, every jamming signal, every intercept attempt, every electronic transmission the target produces, and uses that data in real time to select the warhead detonation mode that will cause maximum damage based on what it is learning. 3 documented modes from the intelligence briefing Kowalski attended 2 years ago. Contact detonation, standard impact fuse, maximum hull penetration, designed for critical machinery spaces below the waterline. Proximity detonation. The warhead detonates before any intercept can physically reach it, sending a fragmentation cone across the flight deck at close range. Against personnel and aircraft on an open flight deck, this mode is not a miss. It is the weapon choosing a different target. Delayed penetrating, the warhead is hardened to survive a CIWS hit. It detonates 4 seconds after impact, inside the hull structure below the flight deck, in the spaces where aviation fuel and weapons are stored. And every defensive action the ship takes tells the missile which mode will hurt most. Every SM-6 that launches tells it proximity is the right answer, because a fragmentation cone at close range covers the entire flight deck, regardless of whether the intercept succeeds. Every CIWS burst tells it penetrating is the right answer, because if the 20mm rounds hit the airframe, the hardened warhead survives and detonates 4 seconds later, below the flight deck. Iran had not built a missile that was hard to stop. Iran had built a missile that got more dangerous the harder you tried to stop it. Kowalski picked up the circuit to the Combat Information Center at 11:15. She identified the contact as the Khalij-5 AI-guided system. She told Reyes it was reading the strike group's defensive emissions and selecting its warhead mode in real time. She told him that every intercept attempt would teach the missile which detonation mode would cause maximum damage. She asked him to hold all defensive fire until she could determine what it was switching to and why. Reyes looked at his display. 1 contact, 8 minutes and 41 seconds to impact. 2 SM-6 already assigned and ready to fire from the forward escorts. He told her the assessment had been logged. He told her to stand by. The first SM-6 launched at 11:15 and 31 seconds. Kowalski watched her passive display as the Khalij-5 detected the SM-6 launch signature. The missile's AI processed the intercept geometry in under 2 seconds. The warhead mode indicator on her display shifted from contact to proximity. The missile had decided that a near-miss fragmentation detonation covered more of the flight deck than a direct impact, and it was correct. The first SM-6 detonated 60 meters from the Khalij-5, a clean intercept against any standard weapon. Against the Khalij-5 in proximity mode, 60 meters of separation meant the fragmentation cone would reach the flight deck. If the missile had been at that distance from the Lincoln's hull, rather than 60 meters from an interceptor, 14 crew members on the forward flight deck would already be dead. The missile was still 7 minutes and 44 seconds away. It had already switched to its most dangerous mode. The second SM-6 launched. The Khalij-5 detected it and held in proximity mode. The AI had confirmed this was the optimal response to SM-6 engagement. It was no longer learning from the interceptors. It had finished learning from them. The second SM-6 detonated 44 meters from the missile, closer, still outside the warhead's proximity trigger range. The missile continued inbound, 6 minutes and 58 seconds. Kowalski was not watching the intercepts. She had been watching the warhead mode indicator, and she had been watching something else. The brief update burst the missile transmitted every 14 seconds to its launch platform, a narrow band encrypted signal carrying the missile's current assessment of the Lincoln's defensive profile. She had the frequency. She had been collecting the transmission since launch, and she had been building a position fix on the launch platform from the transmission origin bearing since 1114. At 1117, the Lincoln's broadband electronic warfare suite activated and transmitted the jamming wall across the Khalij-5's known guidance frequencies. Standard doctrine, maximum power, widest possible band. Kowalski watched the warhead mode indicator shift for the second time. Not contact, not proximity. The third mode, delayed penetrating. The missile had detected the jamming pattern and determined that penetrating detonation inside the hull was now optimal. Because if the CIWS rounds hit the airframe, the hardened warhead would survive the impact and then detonate 4 seconds later below the flight deck, in the spaces where the Lincoln stores its aviation fuel and weapons. Proximity detonation kills crew on the flight deck. Penetrating detonation kills the ship. Kowalski picked up the circuit to Reyes at 11:17 and 44 seconds. She told him the missile had switched to penetrating detonation in response to the jamming. She told him if the CIWS hit the airframe, the warhead would survive and detonate below the flight deck. She asked for all defensive fire to be suspended. She asked for 4 minutes to build a solution. Do not fire the CIWS. Reyes looked at his display. 5 minutes and 31 seconds. The jamming was ineffective. 2 SM-6 expended. The CIWS was his last conventional option. He told her he could not suspend CIWS engagement with a contact 5 minutes from the hull. He told her to transmit whatever solution she had immediately. Kowalski closed the circuit, looked at her display, and kept building. At 11:19 and 14 seconds, the Khalij-5 entered the CIWS engagement envelope. The Phalanx fire control radar locked the contact at 3.1 nautical miles. The missile detected the radar lock in 0.4 seconds. The warhead mode indicator shifted again. Not contact, not proximity, not penetrating. A fourth mode, one that was not in the intelligence briefing Kowalski had attended 2 years ago. A mode that did not exist in the Khalij-5's documented configuration. A mode that meant the AI system had been updated after the briefing, after the program was assessed as years from deployment, and a new capability had been added that no one in the formation knew existed. Kowalski stared at the indicator for 3 seconds. Then she started working faster than she had worked at any point in this engagement. 4 minutes and 11 seconds to impact. She did not yet know what the fourth mode did. She pulled every transmission burst the missile had sent since launch. 9 transmissions, each one a snapshot of the AI's assessment at that moment. She ran the fourth mode activation data against the missile's observed flight behavior. In the 40 seconds since the mode shift, the Khalij-5 had slowed from 900 kilometers per hour to 680. It had descended from 30 meters above the water to 4 meters, and it had stopped maneuvering. It was flying straight, slow, directly toward the Lincoln on a completely predictable trajectory. A missile that had been adaptive and unpredictable for 7 minutes was now flying in a straight line. Kowalski understood why in 2 minutes and 11 seconds of analysis. The fourth mode was a timing attack. The Khalij-5's AI had spent 7 minutes monitoring the Phalanx fire control system's burst cycle. The 0.4 second gap between burst sequences, when the gun is cycling between rounds, reloading, unable to fire. The missile had slowed to 680 kilometers per hour because at that speed, it could time its final approach to arrive at the Phalanx engagement point during a 0.4 second gap, the window when the gun was empty. The missile was not trying to outrun the Phalanx. It was not trying to outmaneuver it. It had learned the exact rhythm of the gun, and it was going to walk through the door between the rounds. Reyes authorized CIWS engagement at 11:20 and 31 seconds. The Phalanx fired its first burst at the contact at 3.1 nautical miles. The Khalij-5's AI registered the burst timing and logged the cycle interval. The burst missed. The missile had already calculated where the gun would aim and positioned itself 14 meters outside the dispersion pattern. Second burst. The missile timed its position to arrive at the engagement point, 0.3 seconds into the gap between rounds. The rounds reached empty air, 2 minutes and 11 seconds to impact. The Phalanx was the last conventional option. It had fired twice. The missile had defeated both bursts not through speed, not through maneuverability, but through timing. Through 7 minutes of watching the gunfire and learning the exact interval of when it could not. In the Combat Information Center, Reyes looked at his display for 4 seconds, then he picked up the all-hands circuit. All hands, brace for impact, now. Kowalski heard the words and transmitted. She could not change the Phalanx firing cycle. The gun fired at the rate it fired and cycled at the rate it cycled. Nothing about that was adjustable in 2 minutes and 11 seconds. But she could change what the missile thought the cycle was. The Khalij-5's AI had been learning the Phalanx cycle from a specific electromagnetic pulse the fire control system generates between burst sequences. A 0.4 second signature produced every time the gun cycles, which the missile's passive sensors had been monitoring since it entered the engagement envelope. The missile's entire fourth mode timing calculation was built on that signature. Kowalski generated a false version of it on her electronic warfare suite. Same frequency, same electromagnetic signature, different timing, 0.6 seconds instead of 0.4. A false cycle broadcast on the exact frequency the missile's AI had been monitoring, telling the Khalij-5 that the gun's gap was 0.6 seconds wide instead of 0.4. A gap that was in reality an active burst cycle. A gap the gun was firing through, not resting in. The missile received the false cycle data at 11:21 and 44 seconds and recalculated its approach timing. It adjusted its speed and position to arrive at the engagement point during a 0.6 second gap that did not exist. The Phalanx fired its third burst at 11:22 and 08 seconds. The Khalij-5 arrived at the engagement point timed for a gap that was 0.2 seconds wrong. The burst caught the missile fully inside its dispersion pattern at 0.8 nautical miles. The Khalij-5 detonated in the air. The pressure wave crossed the Lincoln's bow and threw crew members off their feet in the forward compartments. Bridge windows cracked, warhead fragments scattered across the water surface. Nothing touched the hull. In the Combat Information Center, Reyes stood completely still for 4 seconds. Then he picked up the circuit to Kowalski's position and asked her what she had done to the Phalanx cycle. She told him. The false pulse. The 0.6 second broadcast on the frequency the missile had been monitoring. The missile timing itself into an active burst instead of a gap. It was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, how long had she had the launch platform position? Since 11:14, she told him. 9 minutes and 14 seconds of transmission data. Position accurate to within 18 meters. Rear Admiral Patricia Holt authorized the strike at 11:23. 6 BGM-109. Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from the Mk-41 vertical launch cells aboard the strike group's escorting cruiser at 11:24. The mobile launcher, the AI development team operating the targeting system, the encrypted communication relay that had been receiving the Khalij-5's intelligence transmissions for 9 minutes and 14 seconds, a live data feed from a learning missile that had been reporting the Lincoln's complete defensive profile back to the engineers who built it, in real time throughout the entire engagement. The first Tomahawk impacted at 11:54 and 11 seconds. The second through sixth over the following 22 seconds. Gone between 11:54 and 11:54 and 22 seconds. Kowalski transmitted the Khalij-5's complete AI emission profile. Every mode signature, every update burst frequency, the fourth mode timing attack parameters. To every defensive asset in theater at 11:25. Every ship, every EA-18G Growler, every E-2D Hawkeye. A complete technical blueprint of a weapon that had never been used in combat before that morning and would never surprise anyone again. Iran had fired a missile that got more dangerous every time the Lincoln tried to stop it. That switched warhead modes in real time. That learned the exact timing of the last defensive system and calculated its approach to walk through the gap between the rounds. It walked into an active burst instead because Lieutenant Commander generated a false firing cycle on the exact frequency the missile's AI was monitoring, and gave it the wrong gap to aim for. The lesson the scenario poses, the lesson any AI-guided anti-ship weapon eventually forces every fleet to answer, is not about the missile. It is about the electronic warfare officer, because the most dangerous person in that fight is not the one who jams the signal. It is the one who understands what the signal is asking and gives it the wrong answer. If you enjoyed this video, check out one of our other breakdowns on the war with Iran. See you next time.